Hello, my friends. It's Thursday afternoon and it's time for story time with Nana. And I have book number 17, Christmas story, A Night Without Darkness. Now, this is a story about a people that once lived here in the Americas. We believe that they lived here, called the Nephites, and this is their Christmas story when they lived here on the continent of America. So let's find out about the one night of darkness, or without darkness. Here we go. There's a man on the... Mama and the other women told stories about him. They spoke of one who would bring peace, the one who Samuel said would come when Samuel stood upon the wall and the arrows could not harm him. Some of the women doubted and said they were just stories, but others said he would come and make the mighty and wicked men leave. So this is Samuel on a wall many, many years ago, prophesying of the birth of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Some had dreamed and said it would happen soon, that there were miracles abroad in the land already, and poor men whispering of angels and told glad tidings in darkened doorways. See the men, they're telling their stories, and there's somebody telling these people coming like an angel. But in the streets of Zarahemla, which was a big city, the children learned to hide when they heard hoofs on the stone. They learned not to play too far from their own front doors and not to be out after dark. You don't want to be out after dark either, huh? No, it's not safe to be out after dark. Mama put me to bed early every night. She said it would not do for me to be up. Dark things happen in dark times, she said. But from my window, before I went to sleep, I would count the stars in the northern sky and watch for the new star that Samuel had said would come. I wondered if I would notice it, if it did come. There he is, looking out his window after he was supposed to be in bed, looking out at all the stars over the city. Once, when I was playing ball with the other boys, I said how I had been counting stars. All the boys but one laughed at me and said that their fathers had told them such things were foolishness, and to throw stones at anyone who counted stars, and that they just might. So they thought that they might throw stones at him. That's not very good. That would not be a good thing at all. Then came the day when the notice appeared. It was written on a small, shiny piece of ziff, like a paper. And it was nailed by its corner to our door. The hammering woke me up, and I saw the scrap in my mother's trembling hand. She wouldn't read it to me. She wouldn't let me go outside. And it wasn't until later that morning, when the soldiers came in their armor for Father, that I realized what it said. Oh goodness, the soldiers were like policemen. They came to get his father. That night, the soldiers brought Father home. He was dirty and his robe was wet. When the soldiers left, Father said that he and the other men of the church had been forced to gather wood all day. Dry wood from the forest, kindling wood. So the soldiers oversaw them, and they gathered wood all day long. The men had been ordered to make a huge pile of wood in the center of town. Father said that we weren't to leave our house. He said that if the sign Samuel had spoken of, the new star, and the night without darkness didn't come by morning after next, something terrible would happen. We knelt in a circle and prayed, each of us in turn, until my knees hurt so much I couldn't kneel anymore. I couldn't kneel anymore and had to sit on the floor. Still, we prayed, and it was dark. Look at all those people and their lanterns. They're running. That is one big pile of wood that they've stacked and gathered. The next day seemed to last forever. Without school, without work, without play, Father told us that the prophet Nephi had prophesied we would be safe. Father said that we needed to have faith in Nephi's promise. But I was still scared, and I knew that Mama was too. We sat in our house, hearing the clatter of the horses' hoofs on the stones of the street, listening to the low voices of the soldiers who passed outside our door. Mama held me and stroked my hair. She got up to get some food for me, but I wasn't hungry. That evening we prayed again. Then we gathered at the window in our kitchen, the one that faces west. We sat in silence and watched as the sun crept down against the mountains, sinking, sinking, sinking. And the mountains looked orange against it. You see the sun, it's sinking down and everything looks orange. Sometimes that's what happens on a sunset when the sun is setting. I felt my heart burn within me. Mama held me, her arm warm against my chest, and as the tip of the sun's fire took its last peek over the hills, I knew. The sun disappeared, but the air was still bright. Mama, I cried. Mama, it came. I got up and ran to my bedroom. There, framed in the window by my bed, was the star, so bright I could have seen it at midday. It's the middle of the night and it looks like midday and the star is bright, shining brightly. We poured into the street. We didn't fear the soldiers by our door. They had fallen to the ground with their hands to their eyes. Father stepped over them and began running, and Mama and I ran after him all the way to the center of town. And there in the square by the big pile of wood were other men and women, girls and boys holding hands and singing hymns to the Lord, to him who would be crucified and not be spared. Later, the prophet Nephi led us down to the river. He baptized all who would believe, and there were crowds of people standing on the riverbank, under the trees, hundreds of people waiting, and soldiers taking off their breastplates, because they wanted to be baptized too. They wanted to be protected against the bad things that might happen. Before long, it seemed the sun rose again, and the crowd grew quiet to see it. They stood on the land and in the water and watched it rising in the east as if it were the coming of morning. I crept onto my mother's lap and quietly fell asleep. And as I slept, I dreamed of a little baby boy crying on a hillside, surrounded by sheep. The skies above him were filled with new stars, and each seemed to be an angel. each holding its arms out and singing, "Behold, he cometh unto his own." So that's the story of what happened here in Americas while Jesus was being born elsewhere in the town of Bethlehem near Jerusalem. That is our story for today. A night without darkness. Can you imagine having no night? That it just was sun setting, but it was still bright outside. And then a new day started. So that's our Nephite Christmas story. And I look forward to sharing story number 18 tomorrow for our 18th Christmas story. I hope you have a great evening. Thanks for joining. Mwah.